All right, so the back side of our zero point 0.1 notes on just looking at function notation here, breaking things down. We have this first question here. I want to make sure we read the question in the situation as much as possible. I'm going to translate the following statement as points on a coordinate plane. All right, and we want to go ahead and make sure that we remember that we have f of x, and that's going to be equal to y. So whatever's inside those parentheses, those brackets, that's our x value, that's our domain, that's our input, and then whatever's on the side by itself, on the right side of the equal sign usually, that's going to be our y value. So I'm just going to take a moment to highlight certain things here. Again, 2, -1, 0, -3. Those appear inside the parentheses. And then, of course, on the other side are those numbers right there. So first thing I want to do is just write out points. It's nice when we talk about the coordinate plane, x comma y, that's always in alphabetical order, x first, y second. So this is hopefully pretty simple in terms of x and then our y value, x and then our y value. X and then our y value, and then again finally x and then our y value. There is some specific vocabulary here that I want to highlight, especially because sometimes these points do get confused with one another, and I want to talk specifically about these two locations right here. So when we have an x value that is 0, we call that our y-intercept. Now that's kind of sort of weird, but our x value is 0. It would be on the y-axis, which we'll talk about throughout this whole class. So I just want to pinpoint that for us, that whenever I see an x value of 0, that's our y-intercept. Whenever I see a y value that's 0, like this one in orange here, that is going to be an x-intercept. So that would be a location that would cross over the x-axis. Let's go ahead and take a look at the graph below. So we're going to be, obviously, in this class, talking about functions a lot. We're going to be given a lot of graphs. We've got to be able to plot points and figure things out with that. So again, notice the difference in these problems, right? I have this middle column here where I have numbers that are in parentheses, and then I have these other questions where I have numbers that are provided for me that are on the right side of the equal sign. They're different problems, so we want to make sure that we understand those locations. So let's go ahead and do the middle column that I had highlighted in blue. Where is my x value of -4? And what I will do here is I'll highlight this. Of course, if you want to highlight while you're taking notes, by all means, please do so. If you do a lot of it, right, I got 6 problems, it might get a little confusing. But there's an x value of -4. There's an x value of 0. Ooh, -3. And there's an x value of -3. I thought it was +3 for a second. So where are those locations hitting our graph? Right, we want to look specifically at that, and we'll come to learn what that graph symbolizes here. But where is that graph getting hit at those locations? So if I take a look, and I would say the x value -4 is right there. That would be a y value of 2. So I would just write down 2 right there. Now the one thing I do want to practice throughout this, because it's just good to practice it, we're going to get a lot of reps with graphing points, is just rewriting out the point that we just mentioned. So I'll write that down just to practice. All right, next one is our x value is 0, which is right there. That's the only location where an x value is 0 and it's crossing and hitting our graph, that little curve that you see. And this one is at the origin, just for vocabulary purposes. That is at the origin. So our answer is 0. I'll write it out as a point just to practice. And then finally, and this happens from time to time, and we're going to do our best to approximate a lot during the class, but I have an x value of -3. Well, if I go to an x value of -3, which, as a reminder, is right there, an x value of -3, that's pretty close to right there, and that's not on any type of the line. We're going to take our best to approximate this. Eventually, we'll get onto a website called Desmos, and we'll be able to find a little bit more exact location number for that. But for now, we'll approximate. Whenever I approximate, I'm going to take my equal sign and kind of make it like a wave, a little squiggly. And the y value there would be 1, 2, 3. In between 3 and 4, go ahead and call it 3.5. It is on the upside, so it is positive. So again, that's an approximation. We could probably discuss if that's actually 3.5 or not, but that's not the point of this practice. On the other side, now we're going to take a look and have our y values. So when I have our y values here, we got to be careful in terms of graphing. All right, and understand what's going on. So when I highlight these y value locations, remember that's on the up or the down, so I would move my pen. So a y value of 4 would actually be all of those locations, and of course we got to look specifically at the graph. A y value of -2 will be looking down here, and then a y value of 0 is on the x-axis. So in terms of trying to pinpoint where's the location on the graph, that's the case. And again, notice that we're trying to figure out what is our x value. So we'll go ahead and do that. All right. So y value of 4 would be right in this ballpark right there. All right, and our x value there is -2. So we'll say x is -2. What is that point value? The point value would be -2 is my x, y is 4, again, alphabetical order. X, trying to figure out what x is when f of x is -2. Well, we got to go down underneath the x-axis, and where is that location? I'm going to go ahead and call it right there. What is the x value at that location? Because my y value is -2. I'm going to go ahead and say that the x value is actually +2. Again, I'll write out the point, x, comma, y. And then finally, we have a y value of 0. And that is interesting because we've already had one right there. So we know that x is 0, but take a look at the graph. It actually happens more than one time. Don't forget about it. Take a look, right? I'm looking at all those spots that hit the graph there. So it is possible to have multiple answers where the y value is the same. That doesn't happen for x. Okay, that if you go back to algebra 1, that's not a function. But we do want to include, I don't want the highlighter, we do want to include that there's an x value of -5. So I actually have 2 points with a y value of 0. I do have 0, 0, and I have -5, comma 0.